When Jenny was in high school, she was coming back from the movies with a group of friends. They had the radio on, and everyone was talking except for her. Jenny was in the back seat, looking out across the fields along the road. This particular stretch of road was known by everyone to be haunted. There was a ghost car that you never saw out your front or rear windows. You only saw it as it came past you on the side. It was all black and never had its lights on. It was a 60s Corvette, or it was a brand new Corvette, or it was a Trans Am, or it was a pickup truck. Everyone who claimed to have seen it seemed to see a different vehicle, but always black and always with no lights. And even though Jenny had never saw it herself, she was quite aware of the stories. What Jenny saw that night was off in the distance, a couple hundred yards, moving across the field and keeping pace with the car. When she looked away from the window to check the speedometer, Jenny saw they were going about 50 miles per hour. She looked back, and the object was now at least 100 yards closer than it had been. Jenny saw that it was a person, and that they were running. She couldn't tell much else because they were luminescent. The light wasn't reflected on them. It was coming from them. Jenny turned away and was about to ask the others in the car if they saw what she saw. But they were in a heavy debate about something, so she left it and looked back out the window. It was closer still. Less than 100 yards away and still running. Jenny looked away and looked back again to see if it had moved. It had. It was half the distance closer from where it had just been. It was still difficult to make out the details because of the glow, but it was definitely a man. He was running and looking forward. Jenny looked away and then looked back again. And the glowing man was even closer, less than 20 yards. And without breaking stride, he turned his head and looked directly at Jenny. She couldn't make out his features very well, but she could definitely see his eyes. They were fixed on her. The glowing man kept running, but he was only looking at Jenny. At that moment, they turned off the highway and onto a dirt road that led to her house. Jenny didn't tell anybody about what she saw. She just said goodnight and went up to bed. That night, she dreamt about the car ride and the glowing runner exactly as it had happened, except that in her dream, they didn't get off the highway. The runner got closer each time she looked away, until he was about a foot away from the car window, always looking right at Jenny and running at the same speed of the car. And then he stopped moving his arms, his legs still going at full tilt. Even in her dream, Jenny couldn't make out his features. And at the distance, the glow was actually hurting her eyes a little. And then he uncrossed his arms, put one finger up to his lips, signaling her to keep quiet. Jenny then woke up and didn't sleep again for the rest of the night. Todd replied, "It's not my story, but a good friend. On the weekend before leaving for Navy boot camp, he left the family's house in the middle of the night to crash at home, forgetting his keys in the process. After knocking a few minutes in an attempt to wake his father, he tried the basement window with no luck. Eventually walked back to Todd's house, but they were all asleep. After another trek home, and a few minutes of pounding on the door, still no luck. Frustrated, he sat on the porch and smoked a cigarette. Then, he heard the faint sound of the lock click. He opened the door to see what he thought was his dad walk down the hall and turn left into the kitchen. He walked into the kitchen seconds later to apologize for waking him up. Empty. This was a small townhouse that dead ends in the kitchen. There was nowhere to go. He sprinted up the stairs and pounded on his dad's locked bedroom door. Dad eventually woke up, clearly confused, half asleep, in his pajamas. After the shock started to wear off, they both realized it was the exact year anniversary of his uncle's passing. The person he saw looked like his dad and was fully clothed in jeans and a white polo with a blue collar. Apparently, his uncle wore this type of outfit every day. Anna says, I lived in a house where the previous owner had died at the bottom of the stairs. We didn't know or learn that until we moved out, and it was sort of just a big moment, because we'd always joked about the place being haunted due to the sheer amount of weird things that went on. On one occasion, while cleaning a room, she was moving some anime figures, and when they turned to look at the shelf, one of the figures flew by her head like it was thrown. There was no way it would have just fallen like that. It cleared half of the room and nearly got me in the back of the head. Going back to the owner dying at the bottom of the stairs, those stairs were awful. Anna says not just because they were designed wrong or at an angle or particularly steep or anything, they were just fine as stairs, no problem. However, every single time someone walked up or down them, there would be a near fall at the very least. If you were walking up them, you would get this strange feeling that someone was pushing you backwards. Walking down them, a strange feeling of someone pushing you forwards. Every time, without fail. No matter who walked up or down the stairs. Even the cats took an occasional, and thankfully always minor, tumble on the stairs. It didn't matter how careful you were either. Anna got that weird feeling of being pushed forward once more strongly than usual and actually lost her balance. Luckily, she had the mind to kind of just lean backwards and hold the railing while walking down them at the point so I wouldn't land face first on the floor and crack my head open. She says, I ended up losing balance, falling down and sliding down them, bruising my tailbone so badly that I couldn't walk for days. I had to crawl to the landline so I could call my mom and tell her what happened. Because it hurt. She'd never had any issues with other staircases. But now, she refuses to walk downstairs without holding the railing and going slowly. And she now definitely believes in ghosts.